Like you're recording.
All right, great. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is James Chang, and I'm director of the Duck Career Network here within the University of Oregon Alumni Association. And once again, thanks for being here. With me is Julia Mee, a 1985 graduate of our School of Journalism and Communication, and she is our guest of honor. She's our inaugural speaker for the series called the Duck Insider, which is designed to showcase some of our most accomplished alumni with a specific goal of helping other alumni with their career advancement and exploration. As the interviewer tonight, my goal is to ask Julia questions so that you, our audience, can learn from her experience and her insight. So whether you're someone who's already in the marketing and advertising field and hoping to advance your career, or you're a career changer or recent college graduate who's trying to learn more about this broad field of marketing and advertising, there's no doubt that you will learn a lot from my conversation with Julia this evening. Before I jump into the questions, let me share some basic background. And just to remind you of our agenda, the first part is this one-on-one conversation with Julia. That will be roughly about 45 minutes where I will ask a series of prepared questions. Also, as an attendee, you can submit questions using the Q&A box that you should see on the WebEx screen. And my colleague, Susan Burton, who's Assistant Director of Student and Alumni Relations, will tally those questions and share them with me to pose in the midst of our interview. We'll then go on to the final questions and then a final chance for you to have your questions asked. Once that first part is through, which will be roughly between 45 minutes and an hour, I really encourage all of you to continue with the second part of our program, which is to participate in the virtual networking event. Think of it as speed dating crossed with text messaging, crossed with an alumni social mixer of people in marketing and advertising. So it's a neat new tool that we hope you will participate in. And if you haven't yet registered, it's not too late. You can actually register and join the event immediately after the interview is over. And so definitely please try to do that. And a final comment about that is it's a great place to start the conversation, meet some new ducks that you may not know all over the country in this field, and definitely also it's a chance to hopefully set up future email conversations, Skype conversations, possibly in-person conversations to once again strengthen your alumni network. So without further ado, let me just mention, actually, okay. So let me start with a quick introduction of Julia. Pardon me, we have some questions coming. So a quick introduction is Julia Mee is the Senior Director of Global Advertising, Media, and Sponsorship with Cisco Systems. Before this position, she had also been with very prominent business-to-business and also consumer companies, including Yahoo, HP, and Electronic Arts, EA in particular. She's got wonderful experience managing multi-million-dollar programs for these wonderful organizations, and we're so lucky that she's given us this evening to get to know her a little bit better. So before I launch into my specific prepared questions, Julia, could you please give us a quick introduction of yourself, particularly maybe in a nutshell, how you started from the University of Oregon and how did you move to the Bay?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, James. So as James said, I started at University of Oregon in the journalism. Actually, I started in the music program freshman year. I was a music major, violinist, who quickly realized that my love of music was far greater than my talent for music. I was surrounded by a lot of really great musicians, so I quickly kind of bailed out of the music program after my freshman year and moved over to the journalism school, where I really didn't know what I wanted to do until I took a couple of advertising courses. And I mean, there were just some great professors in the journalism school. There still are. And I really got inspired and excited by what I was learning, joined a couple of the clubs, worked on the advertising competition team. That is still to this day kind of a pinnacle experience, I think, for a lot of advertising students, and really got the bug. And luckily at the time, there was an ad agency from San Francisco called Cisco that came to campus to recruit. Dr. Winter, who was kind of the favorite professor at the time, had a great relationship with this agency, and he got them onto campus every year. So I interviewed with FCB. At the time that I graduated, there weren't any jobs available, so I just moved to San Francisco with the idea that, I wanted to get into advertising, and I was going to give it the summer of job searching and try to get my foot in the door. So just as I was about to give up and move back to Oregon, a job came through actually at FCB, and I started out in their training program, which at the time you started out in media, spent a couple years in media, and then moved over to account management. So I did that path. I spent about 7 years all told at FCB working on all kinds of different brands, Levi's, C&H Sugar, Nintendo video games, Pillsbury Toaster Strudel. I mean, I really ran the gamut of all kinds of interesting companies and brands. And then I got a recruiter headhunter call, actually, from Electronic Arts. They were about to launch the EA Sports brand of video games, and they needed to hire what was their first advertising person. They were still a fairly new company. They'd gone public, but we're still pretty small, about 150 people. And they had this great video game brand, and they decided they needed to go hire an ad agency and launch a campaign. So I joined them and immediately started the process of finding an agency, running a review, hiring one, getting in a campaign ready to go and out the door, which was really an incredible experience. First client-side job. To be in that environment was overwhelming but pretty exciting at the same time. So I stayed there about 4 years, really getting the full idea of what a really fast-moving company is like on the client side. And then I ended up leaving there and going over to HP. HP at the time was, ran the gamut of everything from, B2B to consumer, printers, computers, software, at the time even medical equipment, full range of products. I worked in the advertising department within corporate advertising, and I ended up spending about 9 years at HP, broken up by a stint in the European headquarters over in Geneva, Switzerland, which was actually a real highlight of my career. I moved with my family. My kids were 6 and 9 when we went over there. My husband had sold a company and couldn't get a work permit because the way it worked is that we could just go over on my work permit. So he stayed home with the kids and did a lot of skiing and biking while I worked and got to know what it was like to run a real international business with experience actually outside the U.S., which is a completely different experience than doing advertising inside the U.S. And it really raised my empathy level for that as I moved to other positions. So I eventually moved back to the U.S., stayed at HP a little while longer, took a little bit of a break, took some time off. After that, I was pretty burned out and just needed a little bit of personal time. And then got a call again from a headhunter to go to Yahoo during its steep decline period under Carol Bartz, who was the CEO at the time. I did advertising and sponsorships there as well. Did that for about a year and a half until the budget got completely cut, no advertising at all. I mean, the company was really struggling and layoffs were rampant. I was one of those, got laid off. Which I would have laid me off too. The advertising budget had been eliminated entirely. It didn't make much sense for me to be there any longer. But fortunately, not long after that, again, got a call actually from an old friend and colleague here at Cisco, and a new position had been created combining advertising and media and sponsorships. So I just interviewed for it and was fortunate enough to get it, and that was about 2 years ago, and that's where I am now.
Fantastic. Interesting to hear about the things that were planned and the things that you were right place, right time, right connections, and great track record. So
yeah, a lot of it was right place, right time, lots of networking. I think the only job I actually went out and did the whole, apply for and send your resume in and all that sort of thing was the very first one. And after that, they all came via a network and a little bit of serendipity along the way.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that, Julia. So I thought for the prepared questions, I would use as a guide those promotional teasers we used as we emailed the fact that we were about to interview you. So hopefully if people were intrigued by those sound bites, we can share a little bit more of those insights. And so the first question relates to Cisco securing the sponsorship for the 2016 Olympics, which is amazing. So could you tell us a little bit more about what that entailed? And in addition to that, how does one even prepare for this huge world stage to leverage that world stage?
Yeah, sure. So, for those of you who don't really know Cisco, we make very deep technical products. We're a networking company. We're making the routers and the servers that run the internet. We're in cloud. We're in, basically networking infrastructure. It's a very deep technical product category. And so you might wonder, why would we do something like sponsor the Olympics? Why would we sponsor the NBA? Some of the other things that we do that are pretty visible things to do with a broad audience. We highly select for our audience. We actually market not as much directly to the IT department like a lot of our other B2B tech companies do, but more and more decisions are being made out of the IT department. They're being made by what we call line of business, or the C-suite. CEOs, chief marketing officers, chief financial officers, they're often the decision makers for what are very large purchase decisions for things like our networking equipment. So we look for things that they connect to and that they have a passion for. In the case of the Olympics, we specifically, to be clear, are sponsoring within the country of Brazil. The way the International Olympic Committee works, they have a set group of what they call top sponsors that have full global rights, and those are the ones like Visa and Coca-Cola, the ones that you see, and GE is another example, that do global advertising, spend millions and millions and millions of dollars building their brand globally around the Olympics. In our case, we are a local Brazil sponsorship. Brazil is a very important country to Cisco and to a lot of other companies. It's a fast-growing market. It's got a lot of big challenges as a country and as a community. And so what we saw was the opportunity to go in and actually help make Brazil, the country, a better place by being the networking infrastructure provider for the Olympics. So we went in with that in mind through the bidding process. There's an extremely robust process you have to go through to bid on the Olympics. Ours is a competitive category. We were bidding against some of our fiercest competitors. So we had to really put a business case together, first of all, internally, to get our management team to understand and to agree that there was the opportunity. The opportunity being really in three areas. One is actual business development. Can we sell more because we're a sponsor? Can we use what we're doing in Brazil to help us tell a story that actually will drive incremental revenue for the company? So we did a whole business case that showed that that was indeed the case, that Olympic sponsors are going into the country usually 2 years in advance of the Olympics and starting that selling motion. So we did the analysis around that. We did the analysis around a brand building opportunity. Could we shift perceptions of Cisco in the country of Brazil? Awareness levels of Cisco in Brazil are currently in the single digits. So there's nowhere to go but up. But if we can get more people to be, more of our customers specifically in Brazil to be aware of Cisco and believe in what we do and therefore want to partner with us, that's a huge win as well. So building brand perception. And then the third is really the legacy play. What happens after the Olympics? Have we left the country a better place? Have we positioned ourselves for future business success in Brazil? And so we did a whole internal analysis and then actually put a bid together that proved our case and that we really could be that right partner for the Rio organizing committee. So we'll be providing the entire networking infrastructure for the Olympic Games in Brazil, which is starting right now. We're laying down a foundation of a network that does not exist in Brazil. It's an extremely poor, challenged country. So we are in the process now of upgrading their entire network infrastructure. We are in the process of training people who live in what they call the favelas, which are very poor communities in Brazil, of people who have nothing. And we need to be able to train people to run the network at the actual Olympic Games. They don't have enough professionals in Brazil to be able to do what we need to have happen. So we're in the process of a whole education program to train people in these favelas and how to install and maintain network and equipment. So those people will then have a skill set once we leave that will create a real difference in their lives. So it's a really inspiring program. It's one that I'm really proud of. There's a huge amount of work ahead of us. They keep telling us Brazil is not for beginners, and we are learning that real time. It's a really challenging country full of all kinds of government issues, political issues, pure technical issues. So we're working through those one by one. Simple things like, the Olympics, there's about a 2-hour drive from one venue to the next when the Olympic Games start. How do we get our customers from one venue to another without having them sitting in buses and cars for hours on end? So some logistical challenges that are definitely new for us, but are really quite fun to think through.
That sounds amazing. It definitely feels like you are bringing them into the 21st century in a very short period of time and leaving them so much better once the 2016 Olympics come and go. So it sounds amazing.
That's certainly our intent. Yeah, absolutely.
And compare that where it's very region-specific, country-specific, and your goals there. Contrast that to maybe the NBA, which of course is in our near and dear to so many of our hearts. So how have you leveraged that brand and that property to achieve Cisco's goal?
Yeah, again, we've been partners with the NBA for about 8 years. We NBA is a Cisco customer. They run their entire infrastructure on Cisco equipment. It's one of our criteria for any sponsorship. We never just put our logo on the side of an arena. We never just put it on the back of a race car. A lot of things that typically are done in marketing. We only will partner with companies if they are a Cisco customer and they're using our products and services, because that's the story we want to be able to tell to our customers. So again, the NBA is a real passion for a lot of our customers. So we want to be able to tell them how we're helping the NBA deliver, all of the footage they do to all of their fans, really around the world. It's primarily a U.S. sponsorship, but it's basketball is one of the fastest growing sports outside the U.S. There's a growing passion for it in China, for instance, which is a very important country for us. Even in Germany, which is another important country for us. So it is kind of a different play in the other countries, but nonetheless really is a global sponsorship. So we do everything from, we participate in their tech summit every year, where they bring about 400, 500 people together to hear about how technology is really changing the game and how the game is leveraging new technologies to really be ahead of the innovation curve. So we're there speaking on their panels, entertaining customers, meeting our colleagues, really engaging at a pretty deep level. At the All-Star game, we do behind-the-scenes tours for all of our customers, where we really get to take them into the guts of the mechanism so they can understand the behind-the-scenes of how the games are run, because there's more technology than you could possibly imagine just to deliver a game and then to have it broadcast and to give the fans the experience that they want. Several arenas use our technology. Barclays Center, for instance, in New York or in Brooklyn, you can go in and immediately your mobile phone connects to the Barclays app. It lets you watch replays live sitting from your seat, because so many fans are opting out of actually going into the arenas, because the fan experience sitting in front of your TV at home is actually oftentimes a better experience. They want to be able to be on dual screens. They want to be able to watch replays. They want to be able to get up and go into the bathroom without there being a big, huge, long line, get their own snacks, all of those things. So arenas are really struggling with how do they get fans to come into their arenas, and rather than just sit at home. They need to sell those tickets. So our technology, we're partnering with these teams and with these arenas to deliver to the fans the experience they want in stadiums. Simple things like when you walk into a big concrete building, a lot of times you can't get a Wi-Fi signal. So we really are creating high-density Wi-Fi environments. So no matter how many people are in an arena, you can get on your wireless. People want to be able to take selfies and post them on their Facebook. Technology has to enable that to happen, or the fans won't come any longer. Ordering concessions from your phone, knowing how long the bathroom line is, the time when you want to leave your seat. All of those things are things that we partner with our customers to help them figure out. So our sponsorship opens the doors to a lot of those conversations, and then lets us tell that story in a way that really connects with our fans. We can use the basketball players, the teams, the footage the NBA has to really create some excitement behind some of our messages. So it's a really great partnership, one that we are really fortunate to have.
Oh, fantastic. Moving on to the next question, I believe, I think we all understand that marketers need to be masters of their trade, but you've also shared some examples where when your business is technology, or switch technology to any other industry. Can you comment on the need for marketers and advertisers to really learn quickly, to pick up whoever their clients happen to be, and how does one keep up, because there's so much change out there?
Yeah, there absolutely is. I think core to any marketer's job, regardless if you're in B2B or B2C or any category you're in, you really have to know your customer, and you have to put the customer first, and you have to think of the customer as a real, true human being. So a lot of tech advertisers, for instance, tend to think about, well, my customer is a IT manager or a, whatever, by business title, who's making purchase decisions 9 to 5 inside an office building. But actually, that person is a real human being who's facing a business challenge. They may feel vulnerable. They may need to make decisions fast. They need to know they're picking something they can trust because they don't want to look bad in front of their boss. They may, they have certain passions. They have things that they love to do outside of work. There's ways they consume media. They're not just reading their trade magazine for their particular field. They're going home and watching their favorite shows. They're reading their articles. They're getting them anytime they want on their mobile device. They're watching an amazing amount of video now on their cell phones and on their tablets. So they are human beings just like all of us are, and our job as marketers is to understand them as human beings, try to tap into what their issues are, what their concerns are, and deliver to them relevant stories, not the tech jargon that we want to give or the product features that we want to communicate, but how does it matter to them as individuals? How will it motivate them? How will it make them do their jobs or live their lives better? So that discipline is the same no matter what category you're in, and it's one we particularly lose sight of in B2B advertising, but I think we can all agree when you watch commercials on TV, a lot of times you feel like you're just being sold at, and you tune it out, you flip past it, you move on. They're not engaging you, you're not paying any attention, so they've not done their job properly. So we have to be able to be nimble about it and understand how to talk to our customers in a way that's really authentic and that they will respond to.
Fantastic. Switching subjects a little bit, but focusing on international advertising. Again, you've mentioned going into the Brazil market and also the NBA being, bringing you to a real platform. Can you share with us maybe some examples of the joys and the challenges of trying to do advertising to such a broad market with very distinct cultural sensitivities?
Yeah, it's definitely, it's way easier if you just do one country at a time. Unfortunately, or fortunately for me, because I like doing it, for a global company like Cisco, and the same was true at HP, we can't afford to do different campaigns in every single country. We don't have the production budgets. We don't have the people to be able to do it. A lot of our countries, the brand team is a half of a person's job. So they just don't have the mind share to be able to put into it. They report into sales in our case, not into marketing. So we really, even if we wanted to do it country by country, we just simply can't from an organizational and financial point of view. So our job is to create a global campaign here in San Jose that can actually run around the world and have local relevance. So in our case, we're advertising in India, China, Japan, Germany, Canada, so we've got a handful of countries, not every country, but big countries with a lot of, China is extremely different than India, which is extremely different than Germany, and so on and so forth. So part of the process is up front, understanding their businesses, because our business is not exactly the same everywhere around the world, and understanding some of those cultural nuances, and then getting to a strategy, a core strategy, a communication platform that we believe will be relevant to all of those audiences across the country, which is really hard, but if you get to a big strategic idea and then you go test it out in all of those countries to make sure that it's got some relevance and truth, then you've got the platform where you can go into creative development. The creative development process is equally challenging because now we have an advertising agency in the U.S. who's creating a creative concept, but they have to think through how is that going to actually work outside the U.S. So everything from legal restrictions, there's all kinds of legalities. So in the case of India, for instance, we learned the hard way that they're very specific about how you can use animals in your advertising. And you have to fill out reams of paperwork, no matter what animal, not just cows, the sacred animals, but any animal. So we actually, in one of our ads, had a line drawing of a horse that we animated. And we had to sign an affidavit that was stated that that horse was not harmed in the filming of our ad, which, if you think about it, it's a line drawing of a horse. It's not even a real horse. But we signed the affidavit and, sent it off, and we managed to get clearance in India to run the ad. That's just one example of many where there are things you can't possibly know. So we rely on an international company that does all those cultural checks for us and all those legal checks for us before we even get into production. So we know before we go film anything what we're going to have to do to make it legally clear. We intuitively know you got to be careful with dialogue. You can't have face right to camera giving out dialogue if you have to go translate it into 8 different languages, because clearly it's not going to sync up and you're going to immediately lose your credibility. So we try to work hard to not have face-to-camera type TV spots, for instance. And so sometimes we're shooting 2 versions. We're doing an international version and a U.S. version to make sure that key scenes that need to be, we call it transcreated, not just translated, but transcreated, which means really doing it in a relevant way, creating a relevant version of an international piece of advertising are done. And then we have a master version where they can actually accomplish that. So it's really, really complex, but you learn how to do it over time. We did it at HP. We're doing it here at Cisco. You got to get the right partners in place that think the same way. And we talk to our countries all the time. We make sure we're constantly communicating so we know what issues are they facing, how are they perceiving the creative we're sending out to them, are they using it, is it getting translated appropriately. Sometimes they want to change it in a pretty dramatic way to fit some other needs, so we have to kind of monitor that and coach them through so we have a consistent brand presence everywhere that we are in the world. So it's definitely a particular challenge that comes with being in a global role, which I do, again, enjoy, but it adds a whole nother layer of complexity.
Absolutely. Wow, that makes sense. So great example. Let me make a comment to those who are watching us. Please feel free to use the question and answer box. So if you have any questions, feel free to jot those down, and we will post them towards the end of the program. So moving on, Julia, with the career that you've had so far, can you share with us maybe 1 or 2 moments that have really stood out as your career highlights? What you reflect upon and say, that's why I became a marketing professional. And on the flip side of the coins, if you'd be willing to share, when you look back, when you think of hurdles or challenges, oh my goodness, you're so proud to have survived through some of these challenges or hurdles. So the pro and the con, the best part and the challenges that you've pulled thus far.
Sure. Boy, there's been a lot of high points. I feel really, really lucky to have ended up in a career that's given me some really great opportunities, some great experiences, things that really stand out. I still to this day love it when I hear my son turn on one of his EA Sports video games, and you hear that if it's in the game, the EA Sports tagline, if it's in the game, it's in the game. That was the tagline that we landed on when I ran the first agency review at EA, several years ago. So that tagline's been in place, I think, for maybe 20 years, and that's really unusual in our industry. People tend to change their marketing, every other week. I think we get tired of it more ourselves than our customers ever do, and that, so we go right down that path of, we got to change it again before the customers even started remembering it, and EA hasn't done that. And so it just makes me smile every time I hear that line come across on the video game when my son turns it on, that I was part of the process of creating that so many years ago, and that it was authentic enough to that brand, and a nice enough line, a creative enough line that really would stick these many years. So that's a highlight. Certainly my experience in Geneva, my international experience, stands out both on a professional and a personal level. It really took me and my family out of our comfort zones of living inside the U.S. in a town we were used to, in a community we were used to, in jobs we were used to, and to go someplace where everything was new and everything was a challenge and everything was a new experience. And certainly from a professional point of view, I was on airplanes all the time. I was responsible for 49 countries. I didn't hit every 49 one of those, and many of them I went to many times, some I never got to. But, going from a meeting in London to the next meeting being in Moscow, you got to understand and quickly adapt to those different cultures and the different challenges that they're facing, and really tune your listening skills. Really truly want to understand what the challenges are, not just trying to shove the U.S. way down their throats, which is frankly what a lot of international organizations do. We create it in the U.S. and then we just kind of cram it down the throats of all the people in the countries because there's just not enough time to listen to everybody, but my job was to listen to everybody and really understand them and understand the needs. And I think that made me a much better marketer and probably a better human being for the experience. So that stands out for sure. And then here at Cisco, about 2 years ago, we took what became our new ad agency sort of on a road show throughout the entire company. We talked to people like our chief futurist. We actually have a guy whose job title is chief futurist, and his job is to figure out what is technology going to do to change our lives in 5 years' time or 10 years' time. I mean, talking to him is one of the scariest things you can do. Some of his predictions are truly frightening about how long people are going to live and how jobs will have changed and, you know, what kind of cars we'll be driving and, you know, all kinds of things. And it's fascinating. And talking to our, you know, to technologists and salespeople and executives. And from that, we came up with this concept, or they, I should say, the agency came up with this concept of the Internet of Everything. And the idea that as we connect our world, as their sensors connect everything in our world to ourselves, and people are connected to those things, and people are connected to people, you know, the opportunity that is unleashed to just improve our lives and the way our businesses run. So we launched a whole campaign around that idea, and the traction that it got within the company was like nothing I'd ever seen before. Our chairman and CEO, John Chambers, embraced the concept, has been standing up in front of all employee meetings, kind of, you know, laying it out there as the big opportunity for the company, is talking to customers about it. Customers are coming to us wanting to talk about it. It's gone far beyond a marketing campaign to a true business strategy that's been embraced in a way that just normally doesn't happen. Marketing really sometimes has a hard time muscling into the executive suite and really having a seat at the table and driving strategic conversations. And this, I think, just really grabbed hold of a lot of people's passions and imaginations. And it's, as I said, just really been embraced both inside the company and outside the company. And that's something I'm really proud of, and had a lot of, you know, a lot of fun doing it, and we're still doing it and partnering with a lot of people across the company. On the flip side, the stuff that's been tough, I mean, one really good lesson is, you know, don't overestimate your own worth, because we're all dispensable. So I think maybe it's that you hinted at it in your teaser for this session, that I was at HP when Carly Fiorina, who was the CEO at the time, was fired. And we used to review all of our creative with her. All of our advertising creative went in front of Carly Fiorina, and not all of it, but all the big stuff, all of our TV spots, for instance, all of the really big stuff. And it was really hard to get to her. She's the CEO of HP, a Fortune 50 company. And we had, you know, scheduling and trying to get out in time to meet with her. She's so busy. Well, that was on Friday. We're desperately trying to get time with her, and we come in on Monday morning, and over the weekend she'd been fired, and she was gone. I mean, there was no transition. She was just gone. And so here's a person whose schedule is jam-packed for 2 solid months as the CEO of a Fortune 50 company, and over a weekend, she's just gone. And so the whole company just kind of came to a screeching, what do we do? And that lasted about for, you know, 5 minutes, and then everybody just carried on, you know, and the company just kept going. And obviously it's had its problems since then, and, you know, I fortunately got out before a lot of the worst of the problems, but it was a lesson for me in, you know, people are important, don't get me wrong, and she was, I actually thought she did a good job at the time as CEO, but if Carly Fiorina was indispensable, or was dispensable, I should say, then I learned that, you know, don't take yourself too seriously, because things change, and, you know, any of us could end up, you know, not being there tomorrow, and you have to leave behind a company and a group and an organization that just can carry on without you. So it was a really good lesson, a hard, dramatic time, certainly, but one that I think I really learned a lot from. Another time, I mean, to be perfectly transparent, I made one of the most ridiculous career decisions. I took a job that I shouldn't have taken. I was sort of, I don't know, kind of, the titles and the money and the, you know, prestige and all kinds of things sort of sucked me in, and I should have known better. And I didn't follow my own instinct, and I fell for it. And I literally started on Monday and quit on Friday. And that was one of the most awful experiences. It was embarrassing. I felt terrible about it, and I hope never to do it again. But it sure was a really good lesson. Again, it was one of those lessons that it was a little slap across the face, that you really trust your instincts. If they're telling you it's not right, don't get tricked by well, I'm going to get so many stock options, or I'm going to have this fancy title, or I'm going to be important, or whatever the thing might be that's sucking you in and making you ignore your instinct, because your instincts are probably right. If it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. So it was a horrifying experience, but, you know, lesson learned.
Oh, sounds intense, but thank you for sharing that with us.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, your previous comment also made me reflect upon your earlier reference to the way that you've gotten jobs oftentimes has been through networking and right place, right time, but also built on a lot of hard work. So I think, you know, the question I have is, even at your senior level position right now, obviously it's a people business, relationship business, but do you approach networking in a particular way? Is it always sort of, is there a strategy in terms of not only for work, but also just for, you know, your own professional development and advancement? You know, how do you integrate networking for networking's sake in addition to networking for the business purposes?
Yeah, you know, I've always thought of networking as something that you have to do in a really honest way. It's not about, okay, I need to have a ton of LinkedIn contact or people on my connection list, and I need to have a certain number of Twitter followers, and I need to, you know, schedule all these meetings. People see through that pretty quickly. I get tons and tons of, you know, LinkedIn notes and requests and wanting to, you know, do whatever, come in, meet, talk. And I'm willing to do a whole bunch of them if I feel like the person really sincerely wants to understand what I do, needs some tips, wants to talk it through, and is genuinely, you know, passionate about going down a particular path, or just has a bunch of questions and wants to explore it. What I don't like as much is networking that is, I'll hear from you once, and then the next time I'm going to hear from you is when you need something. And, you know, once you have relationships, you need to maintain the relationships. Because if you don't, and you're only calling when you need something, people see through that pretty quickly. And so my kind of philosophy has been I stay in close connection with people that I care about, people that I've enjoyed working with, people that I feel like we've done good work together, that we've really had a great personal connection. I enjoy that. It's not just because it's a smart thing to do. I enjoy doing it. I've worked with some incredible people at every place I've worked. There's not a single place I've worked where I haven't walked away with outright friendships, but also just important professional connections, people that I really learn a lot from and enjoy talking to. And so it's not about talking to them all the time. You can't possibly do that. But I don't just call them when I need something. I make sure I'm getting together for coffee or for lunch, even if it's just every, you know, I have my old HP boss, you know, it might only be every 6 months or so, but when we sit down and have lunch, it's so sincerely wonderful and nice, and we're, you know, I've helped him with his son finding a job at Cisco, and he's helped me get my foot in the door somewhere else, and a friend of a friend needs some help, and I know I can turn to him for, and I won't abuse that. I won't ever introduce someone unless I really believe that they're a good fit, or that it would be a good conversation for the other person. So it goes back to just really sincerely following up on relationships, maintaining them the best you can, given we're all really busy. You can't do it as much. I don't do it as well as I wish I did, but at least I try really hard to do it in a really sincere way, and not just when times are tough and I suddenly need a job, or I need a connection, or I need whatever, which is why I think I've tended to get some of the calls coming to me rather than me having to go out and look real hard for a job. I mean, everybody goes through that phase. There's, you know, believe me, I know it's hard to find jobs sometimes, but the more just really genuine relationships you have in your arsenal, the more people who will be willing to stick their neck out for you, the better. And you only get that if they really believe you're kind of sincere and going to maintain that relationship and give back. The other thing I feel really obligated to do is do it for others, because lots of people have done it for me. And I you know, when I do get contacted by a lot of young ducks, whether they're still in college or just getting out or trying to decide what they do, I really try to find the time to do it, and I'll probably get flooded after this, which is fine. I think if you took the time to participate in one of these events, and you're taking the time to try to figure out your career and to try to manage your career and look through options, then the least I can do is give you a little coaching and support along the way. It doesn't mean I'll introduce you to people at my agency, or that I'll introduce you to people at Cisco if I don't think you're going to be the right fit for it, but I certainly will try to give you some just good, honest advice along the way if I can. Because people certainly did that for me. I think it's an obligation we all have. It really is.
great insights. Again, I think it's valuable for many people to hear what's on the receiving end of those requests. People are busy, like you said, so very helpful.
Yeah, recognize that we're getting a lot of them. So the more prepared you are, the more specific your questions are, and then take the time afterwards to let me know how it went. I really want to hear from people. So if I did introduce you, how'd the conversation go? Did it lead to something else? What did you learn from it? I really like to maintain that contact. I don't really want to just hear from people one time, but I really am interested after we've talked. And so what happened? How did it go? How's your life going? And because I'm pretty sure you'll need advice again later on, and if we've maintained that conversation, then I'm going to be able to pick right up where we left off versus I haven't heard from you since the last time we talked, which was, 5 years ago.
Excellent, thank you. As we start transitioning to the wrap-up portion, definitely want to make the encouragement that people ask their questions. But Julia, for the last couple of questions, I'd like to continue the advice giving portion. So with two different populations, one with the Duck alumni who are already in marketing and advertising, and once again, I recognize it's a hugely broad field, so you can segment them however you wish. But for people who are in the trenches already in the field, advice for those more seasoned professionals. But also on the flip side, some of the people attending this program are career changers or recent graduates who are simply just looking for that foot in the door. So I'd love to hear what your advice you have for both the people who are already in the field as well as those who want to get in.
Yeah, well, I bet the people in the field would have lots of great advice for me that I'd like to hear, because I think we all have different experiences, and depending on where you're sitting, what kind of company you're in, what kind of job you're doing, you really have a unique experience. So it is hard to kind of give any kind of blanket advice. I think reaching out to other ducks and to other people, again, just building that network and sharing experiences, not just for future career opportunities, but to make you better at the job you're doing. You learn something from other people all the time. And I try hard here at Cisco to go spend time with the folks who are managing our social listening center and our social strategies and social programs, or people who are doing revenue marketing. I'm not a DG revenue generating kind of marketer. That's not my background. And yet a lot of the media placements my media team does, of course, is to support our demand generation, revenue generating marketing group. And I fully admit I don't have that expertise. Fortunately, I have a media person who does, but still I need to understand it. And so I try to admit what I don't know and go seek those folks out and sit down and pick their brains. And I'll never become the expert. They've done it for a whole career. I'm just kind of in and out of it, but I try to learn as much as I can. I've never done Olympics before, so that was pretty daunting when we set out to do the bid. But we have a great sponsorship agency, so I'm fully transparent with them of what I know and what I don't know, and I try to just soak it up from them and ramp my steep learning curve up. So I guess don't be afraid to admit what you don't know. Sometimes it's a little, it feels risky to do that, but I think it's actually more risky not to do that and to try to pretend you know. So yeah, lots of question asking and lots of roaming around a company if it's big enough for you to be able to do that, and just learning from the people who are the experts. For the people just trying to start out, again, it's the same thing, just questions, lots and lots of questions and lots of conversations, because there's really no right or wrong answer, I don't think, especially for starting out. Don't overthink it too much. Just try something. Jump in, work your tail off, soak up all the learning you can. If it's not a perfect fit, it's not the end of the world. Ideally, don't do what I do and just last for a week. Try to stick it out, at least a year, maybe two, just to make sure you're really fine. It's hard at the beginning. It's the first few months of any job, even the first 6 months, you can go, oh, my God, what have I done? That's just the nature of the beast, especially starting out at the bottom rungs. You're thrown into the deep end. You're doing a lot of stuff that doesn't feel particularly glamorous. When I went to college for this, why am I having to go? In the case of ad agencies, the young assistant account managers are out getting the breakfast stuff for our meetings, and they're taking all the notes, and they're doing all the budget spreadsheets, but they're also going to go out on production, and they're also contributing ideas around areas that some of the older folks don't understand as well, and they're coming up with all kinds of innovative ideas, but they're not just doing that. They're also actually, unfortunately, doing some of the less glamorous stuff that just is part of the territory of starting out at the bottom rung. You have to be willing to do it. You really do. You just have to, go in knowing you're going to do it and do the best darn job you can, no matter how trivial that particular task feels, because you're a critical part of the machine, no matter where you are on the ladder. You're not less important at the bottom rung than you are as you are important at the top rung. Every single person has a role to play, and you need to play your role really well, or the whole thing falls apart. So don't be so busy kind of looking up the ladder or up the chain or questioning why you have to do stuff that you don't understand. It's important, even if you don't see it, and just do it the best you can, because the people who do it with a great attitude, those are the ones who get given more and more big projects. So, it's hard, I know, but, and it's not just about paying your dues. It's not that. It's that what you're doing is important, even if it doesn't feel like it is.
Everyone's contributing, and great advice to them. So let me check with Susan to see if any questions have come in. Thank you. Great. I think these are actually really good questions, so maybe I can ask three. You can be as brief as you would like, Julia. The first one is, are there any books or resources that have had a lasting impact on you that you would recommend?
Boy, I wouldn't say there's any books, and I guess maybe I'm not a real textbooky kind of person. I mean, I think it's, and there's always the Ogilvy on advertising, some of the kind of old standby advertising, everybody reads kinds of things, and they don't, it's nice to read them. They don't really stick with me as much. I'm a pretty voracious reader of email newsletters that come in. For my industry, I get one on, from the Wall Street Journal does things around the CMO. They have a whole special section on the CMO, Chief Marketing Officer. So I'm, what are the innovations in marketing that we should be paying attention to? What are Chief Marketing Officers doing that we should be paying attention to, or marketing organizations doing? I get a ton of digital feeds that into my email feed, and I at least skim them and just try to glean out. I love stealing good ideas from other people. There's no shame in that. And so anything I can read, case studies of what other people have done. I still do actually read Ad Age and Ad Week, and I don't read the hard copies anymore, but I make sure I get online. I look at creativity to see what new work people are doing. I look at who's submitting awards into the Clios or into some of the other big award shows, so that I can just see great work that we might not run across, either because it's not running in the U.S. or I just didn't happen to see it. So I try to really be a consumer of the advertising. Same on my sponsorship side of my kind of job, just trade publications and watching what other advertisers and marketers are doing tends to be the way I learn the best. Maybe I'm just a little bit more experiential that way. But definitely sign up for tons of stuff just to be fed into your email. You can always delete it, but if you just skim it, you'd be surprised what good nuggets you can pull out.
Resources are all around, and small chunks and big. Thank you. For the second question, it's about your opinion on social media. The question is, it seems necessary in today's job market to be a good social marketer. The question is, what exactly defines a good social marketer in your opinion?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's interesting because back about, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, it used to be that companies and agencies were separated by traditional and non-traditional. So there was the digital agency or the digital group, and their job was to go do all stuff digital, and the other group's job was to go do the TV and the print and the out-of-home, all the traditional stuff. And that lasted, maybe a couple of years, and quickly those worlds converged, and it became clear that to be a marketer, you had to know the whole thing. You couldn't be a traditional marketer if you didn't, unless you wanted to lose a job. You had to understand digital. It's just another way of getting the message out there. And I actually think that will become more and more the case with social media as well. It will become just part of the natural way that we communicate with our customers. And it's already becoming a natural way that young people communicate. And certainly, all audiences now are just embracing social media as part of their day-to-day arsenal. And so I think when we're delivering our messages, you have to tune them to the right medium. But if you think about social as something really distinctly differently, and you go build a different skill set, you go down that path as a career, you go build that path as an agency, I predict that that will just get merged right back into the fold, and that we'll think about the whole mix more holistically. So my group right now, when we're building a campaign, we automatically think about what the social asset will be. What's the slide share that we're going to put onto LinkedIn that will give people the deeper dive information they want? What's the tweet graphics? What's the videos that we're going to run? I mean, on Facebook, we never go out with the brief, do a viral video, because there is no such thing. That happens on its own, but we constantly are thinking about everything we need to do across every deliver point, including social. We have a different group doing social listening, social training, social ambassador. That is, kind of a separate discipline at Cisco, and they do more of the mechanics of it, and it's a really important job. But as a marketer, I think you just have to assume it's part of your role is to just incorporating it into all of your thinking.
Great, excellent, thank you. And the final question from the audience, what are the essential skills employers in this field look for in their employees? So if you had to maybe identify a handful of those essential skills, what would jump out to you?
Well, it depends on what you consider this field. I think in advertising, advertising agencies, for instance, they love, a lot of agencies love University of Oregon advertising students because they actually have some semblance of knowledge of what advertising, what the profession actually is. And they practiced that by working for the internal ad agency or on the competition team or many of the other real-world experiences you have at University of Oregon that a lot of other people coming into the field just simply don't have. So you're already at an advantage because you have some practical experience. Beyond that, though, just being a good thinker, being a good writer, being a good thinker, being open, being a great listener. A lot of agencies love to hire people like anthropology majors or English majors or history majors because they're just good, they're curious. You got to be a curious thinker, a good communicator. You got to be willing to just soak things up and be able to take complex ideas and make them simple. And I think that's true of marketing as well. It's a lot of just taking lots of complexity and drilling it down to its most simple form, to ideas, not to an ad or not to whatever, but to just ideas. And they rely on marketing. I'm working on a project right now across kind of a leadership training program where they put a bunch of functions together. I've got an engineer, 2 engineers, somebody in supply chain, a couple people in sales, and I'm the only marketer in the group. And it's as much as I was intimidated by their knowledge of our technology and my lack thereof, what I quickly realized is they don't think about the customer, they think about the technology. So what I'm bringing to the party is I keep pulling them back to the customer and to core truths about what the customer cares about, what we need to say to the customer, not what we want to go build from a technology standpoint. So a marketer's value is really in keeping the customer at the forefront of everything you do and being a really good storyteller that will tell stories that resonate with that person on a real authentic level, on a real personal level. To do that, you have to be able to, again, be able to write well, think well, be curious, and just soak things in like a sponge. And that's the experience you're getting at the University of Oregon, coupled with the more practical experience you're getting in the advertising program if you're in it, or in the sports marketing program, in the business school, or any of those. It's a really beautiful combination that I think sets you up well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Julia. So my last question is maybe just a well-rounded question about life and balance, but how would you describe your ability to maintain happiness and balance in your both personal and also your work life?
Yeah, it's interesting. I keep hearing people, the kind of phrase these days is there's no such thing really as balance. That you're kind of always just emphasizing one versus the other. You're just finding your way, and everybody's way is different of living a life that you're happy in. And for some people, they love work so much they're willing to make that be their center of their universe. Others can't even imagine that. For me, it's always been a healthy combination. I really love to work. I realized when I did take a break, which is about a 3-year-long break of not working, my kids at the time were more in kind of the early high school age, and I loved it for about the first 2 months, and then I got really bored really fast. I just couldn't figure out what people do if it's not working. I can only go to Target and Costco so many times before I go start rating mad out of boredness. So I found out that I actually like the intellectual stimulation of working. And I also like spending time with my family, and it's finding the right way to do both without feeling guilty or feeling like you've missed out on one or the other. And I think for the most part, I've managed to strike a fairly reasonable balance. You know, you don't strive for perfection because there is no such thing. Don't strive for balance because that's probably not even really attainable. There's just times where you're going to have the balance go one way versus the other. And if you're really just not having fun, I mean, there are hard times for sure. By no means am I having fun all the time. There's days and weeks where I just am going, oh, you know, I got to go back to the grind. But for the most part, I really have fun with what I'm doing, and I get a lot out of it. And when that stops, then it's time to kind of start looking at making a change, because life is just too short to burn away time doing something that you're not getting some intellectual stimulation from, that you're not getting some creative stimulation from, and that you're not actually having a good time doing. So, you know, it's worked well for me. I mean, I've certainly had the challenges over the years, much harder when, you know, kids are real little, much harder when you're first starting out and everyone's asking you to work kind of ridiculous hours, but it evens out over the long haul, and I feel like all told, I'm pretty happy with both.
Good, good. And I would say that as I hear you talk about your experiences and your work, and, you know, there's definitely that energy in, so it seems like it's definitely feeding you to keep on going and keep doing the good work and enjoying it too. So,
yep. Yeah, U of O served me well. I got a good education and got some doors opened by some great professors, and, you know, I'm very grateful. I spent 8 years on the board of the Alumni Association, giving back to a university that I think gave a lot to me, and it's well worth the time to give back to it. It really is. It's great coming back onto campus, getting engaged in what's happening on campus. If you can't do that, get engaged at your local chapter level, because, you know, you really meet some great people, and you remember what's so fun about being on campus. If you're still there, soak in every bit of the experience, because it's a fantastic university, and you know, just the life experience of it is one that I think you'll really treasure.
Excellent. Well, you know, Julia, I will say thank you for providing this evening of insight to so many people. Because this is being recorded, it will also be available for other alumni and also recent graduates to view, so I think you'll continue to help many other people. And as you mentioned, being part of the board of directors for the Alumni Association, being a past president, this is just another example of you giving back, so I can't thank you enough.
Of course, happy to do it.
Thank you, thank you. At this point, for those in attendance, I definitely want to just finish with some closing remarks. One is definitely do join that virtual networking event that takes place right after this formal interview ends. I really wanted to, I guess, springboard off of Julia's comments about there are going to be seasoned professionals within this networking event. So some may come from, you know, the agencies and are still there. Some are with larger companies, smaller companies. Some are doing some more of the data analysis. Others are on the creative side. So Julia, I think, has set a great framework for how one can be successful, but marketing and advertising can be so diverse, so divergent, that this is going to be a wonderful chance that within the next hour or so, you'll be able to glean lots of people's insights. And as I mentioned before, use this as a springboard to then follow up via email, via a Skype chat, maybe even meet people over a cup of coffee to get to know each other better. So if you've registered, once this event closes, you'll be directed directly into the login page for the virtual networking event. And once again, if you have not yet registered, no worries. It takes you maybe just a couple of minutes, and then you can jump in right away. There's no such thing as joining late, because people are always starting and ending conversations, so joining whenever you can will be great. The final thought I wanted to share is that, again, thank you so much, Julia, for being part of us this evening. And today, as a matter of fact, I learned that Julia was named one of the top 10 business women to watch by fiercecmo.com. So we're thrilled to have you with us. Here's another resource for those of you who want to stay cutting edge with marketing, fiercecmo.com. I'll go on that site and learn more. But on behalf of the University of Oregon Alumni Association here in Eugene, with the Matthew Knight Arena just behind me, and also on behalf of Julia Meade, who's in the San Francisco Bay Area, thank you all for joining us tonight, and hopefully we'll meet up in just a few minutes online via virtual networking. So thank you so much. Thanks again, Julia. Talk to you soon. Bye.